And you start looking at groups of people demographically and say, listen, my audience is 73% female. Well, you know what it's going to do is going to force you to start thinking stereotypically about women because you're trying to figure out how to get those folks to pay attention and do something you want them to do. And if you say my folks are 73% female and they're baby boomers and they make $100,000 a year, you're just using stereotypical thinking to try and understand who they are and what's going to get them to pay attention and be inspired and motivated and engaged. And this is one of the key reasons why we went and invented Valuegraphics and have done this global research project is to combat that problem. Because guess what? People who are the same age, income, gender, marital status, they're not the same as each other.
Yeah.
It's a terrible way to try and understand who people really are on the inside. It's a great way to look at them on the outside. Income, gender, and age are absolutely relevant. But what we've been doing wrong is saying, okay, well, now we know who those people are. We don't. We only know what they are. And there's a big difference.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Dechtman, your Keynote Curator. Today, our guest is David Allison. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thanks for having me over.
It's a pleasure. Where does this podcast find you?
I'm in Vancouver on the beautiful west coast of Canada, and it's just starting to get gloomy and fall-like here, so yeah, it's still pretty gosh darn beautiful up here, though.
Yeah, it's one of the leaves are changing and, you know, the air is crisp and you just had your Canadian Thanksgiving.
I am full of pumpkin pie. I ate my body weight in pumpkin pie last night and I couldn't be happier. I wait all year for this.
So, well, now you have until, you know, the winter holidays to kind of make up for it and get back on track.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, David, I am just so excited. You're our neighbor to the Great White North, living in that greater Vancouver metropolis area, surrounded by beautiful lakes and mountains and a wonderful, vibrant city. And as you know, the majority of our listeners are meeting professionals, but we also have a bulk of listeners that are business owners and are looking for all sorts of insights and ideas and thoughts that can make a difference immediately, that can expand their capacities, expand a view, a mindset, tools that can basically improve and, you know, and have them grow as business owners, as meeting professionals. So let's keep that in mind as we continue this conversation. You are an expert in human values, a best-selling author, a fantastic keynote speaker, and you're the founder of the Valuegraphics Project. I am excited to dive deep into this conversation with you, David. Thrilled to have you. You're an important guest for us. Why don't we start with the Valuegraphics Project? In 3 hours or less, can you synthesize what that is, please?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. So we've all heard of demographics and psychographics. These are ways of looking at groups of people and trying to figure out what they're all about and what they're going to do and how we can, you know, either convince them to do something or buy something or whatever it is we're trying to get.
And demographics, and it's a way to segment or organize in ways that, you know, we can understand or categorize, not labeling people,
absolutely,
but putting them in groups, containers, buckets, if you will, so that it's not just one huge mass of, you know, differentiation.
It's true. But you know what? It does involve a lot of labeling. And therein is one of the problems with this stuff. If you start looking at groups of people demographically and say, listen, my audience is 73% female. Well, you know what it's going to do is going to force you to start thinking stereotypically about women because you're trying to figure out how to get those folks to pay attention and do something you want them to do. And if you say my folks are 73% female and they're baby boomers and they make $100,000 a year, you're just using stereotypical thinking to try and understand who they are and what's going to get them to pay attention and be inspired and motivated and engaged. And this is one of the key reasons why we went and invented Valuegraphics and have done this global research project is to combat that problem. Because guess what? People who are the same age, income, gender, marital status, they're not the same as each other.
Yeah.
It's a terrible way to try and understand who people really are on the inside. It's a great way to look at them on the outside. You know, I always end up reaching for my reading glasses, which aren't here at the moment, but let's pretend I'm holding them in my hands. So reading glasses are demographically, there's a reality around who's going to buy a pair of reading glasses. It's just a fact. It's not selling to 17-year-olds. And let's say you got reading glasses made out of platinum with diamonds. They're Elton John's reading glasses. They're going to sell to a certain demographic around income. And if they're really big, they're maybe made for a man's face. So income, gender, and age are absolutely relevant. But what we've been doing wrong is saying, okay, well, now we know who those people are. We don't. We only know what they are. And there's a big difference. It
Hmm.
might be that the people who we would like to get to pay attention to our reading glasses are all on the inside. What makes them similar is something like personal growth, that they're all motivated by this value of growth. Our values drive us and help us make every decision in our lives. So if you understand the values of a group of people, you can get past that superficial nonsense about age and gender and income, marital status, number of kids, race, religion, all those sorts of things, because they really doing a terrible job of helping us understand what people are really all about and what's going to engage, motivate, inspire, and eventually, what we're all here trying to do, which is influence some outcomes. We want something to happen. We want some people to pay attention to us and do something we want them to do. If you're using demographics to try and figure that out, you're using a broken, faulty tool. So that's why we invented value graphics.
I know value graphics is on its own, it's unique and it's its own idea, but it sounds like it's built upon what the tool of demographics was, and that this could be another iteration or the 2.0 or a deeper understanding of, because like you said, those are valuable things, this demographics, but it's not the whole picture.
No, we talk about it as a three-legged stool of audience understanding. So if we all agree that what we're here to do is try and get some people to do something, we need to understand them. And to understand them, there's three ways we can look at them. One, demographically, still necessary. Think about it like just putting a fence around a group of people and saying,
Would you
those are the
say that
folks.
that's just a basic orientation or a mapping of a
Yeah, it's just a
segment?
demographic truth, right?
Hmm.
Gender, income, marital status, number of kids. It's stuff you can measure. It's stuff you can see it. And it can be important, like the reading glasses example.
Hmm.
Then the second leg of the three-legged stool is this catch-all phrase called psychographics. And that's interesting stuff. That's preferences, likes, dislikes, emotions, beliefs, past behavior, all of that information, which we've been, by the way, drunk on for the last 20 years. Someone sent out a memo a while ago and said, guess what? Data is the new oil. And we all just started collecting so much data. And it's all this psychographic stuff, click studies, eye scanning studies, geolocation, all of it. It all comes from the past because we know it. As soon as we write it down on a piece of paper, that means it's happened. Even if it was 10 seconds ago on a website and it's a click study, it happened, it's over. And so that's if we're trying to get people to do something next, it's like driving the car by looking in the rearview mirror. You might get there, but what you really want to do is look out the windshield, right? You want to see where you're going and where these people are headed next. And since our values, in a very neurological way, drive every decision we make, if you know what a group of people's values are, you get the value graphics leg on the three-legged stool. So demographics describe psychographics as a record of what they've done so far, and value graphics to influence what they're going to do next. All three, you got to have
Yeah.
them.
It seems like, and correct me where I'm wrong or off here, but it's like that third leg, the value graphics, really speaks to the heart of the matter, which is what are their core virtues? What is it that touch, moves, and inspires them? What is it, gosh, that makes them tick? I'm thinking of all these cliches that come to
Yeah,
mind,
yeah, that's
David.
a great
But
one.
but sure, I'm tall, or I was born in this year and I have this kind of, well, I was going to say hair, but I don't have any hair. But really, underneath all that, and that's useful information to begin to get oriented or shape away some of the noise, the obvious things that aren't relevant. But underneath the hood, down there, where the machinations and the micro are happening, it seems like it's the core virtues. What does that have to do with, tie together for me, that distinction and utilizing that tool to be connected with people?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to go into neurology a little bit here. So we've all heard of the prefrontal cortex, and inside there's a little piece called the insula. And the insula's only job in the world is to scan what is the incoming data. So for the brain, for the insula, that's the sights and sounds and smells and past memories and experiences and everything it can get its hands on every time you're faced with a decision, thousands of times a day, every single time, not just the big ones, all of them. What you're wearing today was a decision you made. It counts just as much as the new car you might buy tomorrow. So your insula scans the data and goes, wow, what should we do here? And it uses one set of filters to figure this out. And that's your core values. This one's aligned with our values better than that one. Think about it like a can of soup in the grocery store. You got two cans of soup. You don't even know you're doing this, but somehow you're going to pick one and throw it in the grocery cart. And there's going to be some cues on that can of soup. It might be the color, it might be the text, it might be what they call it, whatever. This one is maybe more, feels a little bit more prestigious and fancy. And if social standing is one of your values, you might pay an extra buck for that one and chuck it
Right.
in the cart.
Right.
But if environmentalism is one of your values, and this one is talking about how the rainforest wasn't damaged and how they planted trees every time they got some more ingredients to make the soup, that one's the one you're going to chuck in your cart. It's a
Right.
very oversimplified
Or
example.
low sodium.
Or low sodium, because then it's health and well-being is
And
their
that way
value
I
that
can
you're
eat more
paying
pumpkin
attention to.
pie.
That way you can have more pumpkin pie. Now, what's happening is your insula is filtering. And when you make the right call, when you do what your insula says, go do that one, go get that one, that one's aligned with their values. Well, then you get a little dopamine hit. And we all know how powerful dopamine is. We wake up every day in pursuit of values alignment. This is the international hand symbol for values alignment. We wake up chasing values alignment because it gives us our dopamine. So this is incredibly powerful. We are neurologically hardwired to chase after our values. And now we have a way of looking at a group of people and saying, here's the values they're chasing. So you asked me to connect the dots. There's the dots. We've got a group of people. We're trying, as business owners, as people who do what we do in the world, we're trying to get that group of people to do something. Well, now we know what they're chasing. We just have to show them how we're going to give them that, and they're going to chase us. It becomes very simple. That guessing of sitting around and going, wonder what we should do. What if we did this? How about if we did that? What did our competitors do? Well, Bob over in strategy thinks we should be doing this. What if we had data that said, here's the stuff that you should pay attention to because it's what they're paying attention to?
Right.
Now it gets very precise.
Right. Which then leads me to think, this is where the art of it comes in, and I'm a firm believer that business, life is art is life. Every conversation, every email, every thought, it could be a mundane thing, but what do you choose and how do you communicate it? So if we take the value graphics and you're using, what was it, the international symbol?
The international hand symbol for
Okay.
values alignment. Yeah.
How am I doing okay
You're
on
doing
that?
it. You got it. You got
Okay.
it. It's a slightly American version. I've seen
Well,
that.
it's the translation. I don't have about or sorry in there. So, I'm just kind of, if we're able to distinguish that and reveal it, unconceal it, and we say, okay, wow, the way you described it, David, this is like gold, right? It's part of the map, the treasure map. But then help me out here. The art of taking that and bringing it forth in a way, however it's executed, manifested, deployed in a marketing campaign, in an event strategy. Right. That's now the next step of making that connection. How values that are important and are core virtues for people attending events are then being connected by how the event is executed and deployed and how it occurs and what the experience is. So we hear about sustainability, we hear about diversity, inclusion, equity, and all of that. But how are we as event professionals, meeting professionals, deploying it? How is that showing up? Can you see the connection there?
Absolutely. So let me give you a concrete example. I do a lot of work with the event planners world. I speak at IMEX. It's my fourth time coming up in Vegas, at Site, at MPI, and I'm doing some work with Google and the Google XI on how we can bring the value of belonging into events. But all of this work means I've been researching and looking using the Valuegraphics database, which is a million surveys in this database we draw from. But all of this work means I've been researching and looking using the Valuegraphics database, which is a million surveys in this database we draw from. What are people who go to events all about? What are their values? What makes people who go to events tick? So I won't go into the whole thing, but I'll share one with you and show you how you would execute on this.
And if I may
One of the
just say one thing,
Yep.
not only what makes them tick, but those that frequent it and live in that ecosystem, if you will, live in that world that you're so familiar with. The landscape is constantly transforming. What are they looking for? Not to follow trends, but what is on the forefront of setting those tendencies.
Well, what's beautiful is our values don't change. We get them when we're young in a period of human development that the sociologists call it socialization. So once you've got the values for a group of people, they're locked and loaded. How they respond to the world and decide which trend is the one they're going to follow. That's all about their values. So their behaviors will change, their emotions, their decisions, those will change, but it's always because of this bedrock, fundamental internal GPS system they have, which is their values. So when we study a group of people and say, okay, attendees, we'll use data from the United States as an example. So attendees who go to business conferences and events a lot in the United States of America, one value that they over index on compared to the general population, there's 56 values. So of the 56, they're over indexing on this one value. It's the value of loyalty. Now,
Mm,
loyalty can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So that's why in our research, what we've done is map all of them. So there's 56 values, but there's 8,000 different codes for what those values mean to people, how they manifest in their lives, what conditions need to be present for them to get the values alignment that gives them the dopamine hit that makes them feel, okay, that's the right decision. I did the right thing.
right. They
So
feel
loyalty,
congruent. They feel like totally in alignment.
great word. Congruent is a great word. It's all about values congruency. So, for loyalty for event attendees, the specific type, the code for that is they're loyal to people that they've shared experiences with in the past, not to brands, not to teams, not to strangers, not to the human species, to people they've shared experiences with in the past. So, you're an event planner. What are you going to do with that? That is a statistically accurate fact. They're going to be motivated and it will resonate with them if you can figure out how to give them some sense of that loyalty alignment around people that they've had relation or had experiences with in the past. So I know from all my work and all my friends who are event planners that one of the things that's being talked about as a new way of thinking about events is not just a moment in time, but a moment in time is the artifact of an engagement strategy over the course of a year. That it's
Sure.
not just about a weekend. It's about what are we doing to keep these people feeling like they're involved and engaged with each other over the year. So right away, the very first thing, the connection there, because we know they're loyal to people that they've shared experiences with, you're doing the right thing. So if you need any justification for the C-suite that a year-long engagement is the way to think about a particular event strategy, there's the proof right there based on a million surveys around the world on what makes people tick. They want to be loyal to people they've met before. Now, let's get a little more precise with this. Before an event, what can you do to remind them of people that they met last year that they're going to see again? Because they're loyal to people that they've shared an experience with. How can you connect them through an intranet, through
Right.
making that app that you have for your event launch a lot sooner than it normally would? So they start to see, oh, look, Bob's going to be there and
Right.
Seth's going to be there and
Right.
Matt's going to be there. And
Right.
that's going to start to trigger that value. And then, of course, at the event, what can you do to make them remind them and connect them and make them all feel like, oh yeah, there's everybody, and I'm here with
Yeah.
people who I previously shared experiences with, and then go to the after the event. How do you
Sure.
keep those connective tissues alive and
Yeah.
moving forward
In
afterwards?
fact, it's great. We know that you rated this keynote or this breakout last year. Well, based on our feedback, there's this upcoming keynote that we've designed, or this upcoming breakout design based on the two or three that you love. We want to make sure that you get it on your schedule and you can continue that.
Even more, even more so, here's this keynote that you really loved last year, and the people who were at it 70% of them are coming to this keynote this year. So since you're loyal to people you've already shared an experience with, you're going to want to come to the same keynote that your friends from that last keynote came to, because there's some validation for you in this coming keynote. So making it about, this is a community, and it's across a year or 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, however lucky you are to keep people engaged. That's an absolutely golden strategy for
Yeah.
anybody who's an event
Yeah.
planner. And now we have data to back it up, not just, wow, it kind of makes sense. Seems like a smart thing to do. Of all the smart, sensible things we could be doing, how much money are we going to put against that one? See, the other thing that's beautiful about these values is once you see what they are, they also tell you what not to do. Don't waste your money on anything that doesn't align with the values that we've identified for a particular audience. So when I get up to speak, this is sometimes the big revelation is, sure, this value, this value, this value, it reinforces that this strategy, this strategy, this strategy are smart things to do. It's not always earth shattering, but what is earth shattering is you don't need to worry about the other stuff. You can
Right.
focus now.
Yeah.
You can focus, right?
Yeah. And often human beings go the other way. It's much easier. It's lower hanging fruit. It's a lower denominator of saying what it isn't, as opposed to focusing on what it is. A little
Yeah.
bit philosophical, a little esoteric, but if you're anchored and the essence, and again, I'll use this word, if the core virtue is really dialed into your meetings attendees, what's important to them, not just for this upcoming event, but knowing what they've attended in the past, what's spoken to them, and then communicating and keeping that conversation alive through the upcoming event and beyond, is really a way to keep that activation, that engagement going, not just for your event, but the community of attendees, the community of ideas within the industry that are going to expand everybody's experience and have their core virtues be spoken to, and that they're saying to themselves, this event is congruent and aligned with my values.
Yes, I'm going to correct. Yes, and I'm going to
Okay.
correct you just a little bit, because it's not about the keynote. It's not about the event itself. It's not about the workshop or the speaker. This value of loyalty and being loyal to people who I've had a relationship with before, it's about the people. If you can say to me this other thing that you want me to come to, the people that were at that one before that I got to know are also going to be there. Doesn't even really matter what the thing is. I mean, of
Yeah.
course it needs to be great,
No, no.
but what's going to motivate them
Yeah.
is that the people are going to be the same.
Yeah. I hear it. It's a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
vessel, even is a space, is a structure to have those connections happen. And
Bingo.
when the core values, when David and Seth are aligned on the most beautiful pumpkin pie in the world, I mean, that I can't think of anything more
Where
congruent.
we eat that pumpkin pie
Right.
does not
It
matter.
doesn't
Like,
matter. I
about
mean,
David and Seth love the pie, and we're just
yeah.
going to follow the pumpkin pie.
Yeah,
That's
as
what we're
long
doing.
as there's gastronomical coherence and alignment, I pretty much can be at a bus station or on the side of a road. It doesn't matter. Um,
Exactly. You
that's
got it.
really
If that value is important. So I don't want this to sound like it's a panacea for everything, because there are 56 values and 8,000 definitions for what they mean. So the Google thing we're doing is an example. It's all about event planners. So it's maybe something I should talk about for a second.
sure. I'd love to hear about that. In fact, I become more and more familiar with it as it's in my inbox, and other meeting professionals have, oh, I just came from this, or I was reached out to by Google for that. So I'd love to dive deep for us.
Sure. So I ran into Google about, Google XI and Megan there about 6 to 8 months ago, maybe even a little longer. And working with Naomi Claire Krellen from Storycraft Labs, Megan Henshaw and the Google XI team have been doing a lot of qualitative work, talking to event planners and trying to sort out what makes events inclusive and work and embrace a diverse number of diverse kind of people, all the different flavors and colors and stripes that people are. How can we make them all feel like this event is for them? And they came up with this notion that it's about belonging. You need to feel like you belong in order for an event to resonate. So that's about when we bumped into each other. I said, well, isn't that interesting? Belonging is one of the 56 values in the Valuegraphics database. and there's 912 kinds of belonging. Those are from the 8,000 codes. So we've built a dashboard where an event planner can go and choose a region of the world where their next event is going to be happening, the occupation of the people who they're inviting to come to that event. So let's say China, lawyers. So you're doing an event for lawyers in China. And then the next page pops up and says, here's the conditions that need to be present for lawyers from China to feel belonging at your
Mm,
event. So it's a great resource for event planners to start
yeah,
seeing what
that's
kind of
yeah.
belonging needs to be there.
And is it a chicken and an egg at that point where you feel the sense of belonging, the experience of belonging, that then a value like loyalty can be fomented?
Well,
Does that
belonging is a really interesting value. It does mean a whole lot of things to a whole lot of people. Loyalty appears as one of the kinds of belonging for some people in
okay?
some parts
I
of the
can see
world.
that. I can see
But
that.
but but belonging is only one value. So any group of people coming to a conference, there's going to be a lot of values that you can leverage around that group of people if you know what they are. Belonging is just one. It
Sure.
happens to be one that's quite universal, not everywhere. And not everyone is motivated by belonging, but a large number of people in most places are.
Right. And I don't even know if motivate. I think it is important. Even those that feel isolated either are longing to belong. I
Yeah,
I believe it's important. I think of
that
when I
song
was
lyrics coming out of you now.
yeah, not again.
Yeah, it's
No, but
belonging is
that
a very.
Google that work with Google is fascinating. Where so
I can
it
give you a link if you want to go play with it because it's an easy one to remember. It's valuegraphics.online / belonging.
okay,
Uh,
perfect.
not not .com, but .online. Valuegraphics.online / belonging. Now, anybody listening to this, you need to know it's a beta right now, and the last step in the process, which isn't there yet, is Google XI folks and Naomi from Storycraft Lab. They're now out going and talking to a bunch of event planners again all around the
Correct.
world and saying, okay, now that we know exactly what we need to do to get belonging to happen for specific groups of people, how can we execute on that event planning people? And so eventually it'll say, okay, what you need to do is have your check-in system work like this, and you have to have your speakers chosen like this, and you have to have your room set up like this, have actual practical, tactical takeaways
Yeah.
that are crowdsourced from the events industry themselves. So for now, you just get to see the belonging, the type that comes to the Value Graphics database, and there's a form you can fill out if you want to participate and throw your ideas in the ring and help with that last piece. It's going to be a free resource. So we're just trying to make the
Yeah.
events industry better for
I've
everybody.
seen some of the guests that have been on our podcast, meeting professionals, have gone through that as a Storycraft Lab where you're an adventurer, or what are those where they go
I'm
through
not
the
I'm not so familiar with their with as I should be with their
yeah.
work.
So you go through this process and you're not labeled, but you're identified like what your essence is. And
Yeah.
you know,
They approach things from a qualitative research perspective. So they're trying to pull out individual stories in depth from a small number of people, where what we've done is gone and talked to a million people around the world. We've asked them questions that they've responded to in a qualitative way, but then we've turned it all into numbers so that ours is a quantitative approach. And so
is
this qual quant relationship is going to end up building a really beautiful tool.
is this work with Google that you're doing what excites you the most right now?
Oh gosh, what excites me the most is wow, that's a big question. Uh, there's so many exciting things going on. We're launching a new product in the fall that's going to allow individuals to take a test like Clifton Strengths and understand, based on the million surveys in our database, understand what their own values are and how they can use them to show up as the best version of themselves, of their work and their personal lives. So that's going to be a really big step forward. We're doing some really exciting work with some pretty phenomenal clients all around the world. And then the speaking work that I get to do, I guess, is really where my heart is. I love
Yeah.
getting up on a stage and saying, okay, whoever I'm talking to, let's say it's people who sell insurance and annuities, for example,
For
clients
example,
that you and I are working on together. I'm going to be able to get up and say, listen, based on all this research we've done, here's the core values that are motivating people like you who work in this industry, my friends, here in the insurance and annuities business. And here's the values of your customers. Now let's look at where they're the same and where they're different. And why we want to do that is because the places where they're the same, there's that hand symbol again, where they're the same, those are your superpower values. Those are
Yeah.
the values that you know that you share with your clients that you can double down on, and you can develop strategies and tactics that suit those values, and you can't go wrong. It's going to work great for the workforce and great for the clients as well. And here's the ones where you don't agree, and those are your kryptonite values. So you got to remember, you may think these things are important. They don't. They think these other things are important that you don't. So if you're here trying to do stuff for your clients, you got to think like them. And now you have the information you need to go do that. So that's the essence of
Yeah.
the keynote that I deliver
That
is
it,
helping
it
people do
takes
that.
it removes mystery.
Yeah, which I guess, there's something, it can be nostalgic for mystery, but
Right. I guess David, the romantic in you loves a little mystery,
a
but
little mystery.
that's a value that could be utilized in other areas as well.
Yeah. So it does. You're right, though. It does. We all do this at some point, no matter what we're doing. We all sit around and go, okay, we've collected all our data. We've looked at everything we could possibly do. We've analyzed, we've done plot graphs, we've done everything. Now it's time to place our bets, and we think we should do this. Not in the research world is referred to as the last mile.
Right.
So you gather all the information, insights, and smart people, and everything you possibly can, and then you got to still kind of make a guess
That's
in
right.
that last mile. Now, if you still do all that, but you also know what people are going to respond to, well, then that last mile becomes like the last 100 feet, because you still need to come up with a good idea, but you're so much more sure
Right.
what people are going to say yes
Yeah.
to
You
that you're
really
taking a whole lot of risk off the table.
Yeah, you've narrowed it down, you've focused it, dialed it in, calibrated it, and it's really honed in, and
Yeah,
it eliminates a lot of the noise,
it does. It
Yeah.
does. Can I do a book plug? Because there's a
Yes,
helpful
please.
tool here.
We always do that. So go
So
ahead.
So this is, I just happen to have one handy. This is my book. It's called The Death of Demographics. Get my hand out of the way there. And it's available on Amazon, and I'm sure there'll be a link in the podcast and all that stuff. But the
Yes.
reason I'm telling you about it isn't to get rich, because I make like 75 cents per copy that you buy. So I
And
make,
ladies and gentlemen, just full disclosure, that's Canadian cents.
however, in there, we worked really hard to build a 15-question quiz that has been tested on audiences around the world. So we know it works. And those 15 questions, if you use them and give them to whoever it is you want to try and engage and influence, the answers, when you add them all up and do the math, a little simple math that we give you in the book, it'll point you to one of 15 chapters. And each chapter is an archetype that we see in our database of 1 million survey respondents from around the world. There's 15 archetypes. And in that chapter, we tell you everything we know about what makes those people tick. So it's not super duper accurate. It's kind of like the sketch on the back of a napkin version of value graphics profiling, but at least it gets you starting to think about the
Yeah.
values of people that you're trying to
Yeah.
engage and influence, right? It gets you
I
started.
yeah, no, I was just gonna it's a starting point. It's a point of departure. And from there you can deepen the understanding.
Yeah.
David, we've come to the end of this conversation, this episode. I feel like we've left a lot on the table. Our rapport is rich, and I could go on and on with you. We always like to, maybe at the end of this work that you've done with Google down the road and it's gotten a little more traction, we can have you back and we can
Love to.
dive a little bit deeper into that. But before we go, I'd like to jump into what we call 20 questions, which is not technically 20 questions, but it's in the spirit of a rapid fire word association kind of response. So are you
Okay.
ready? Get positioned, get ready. All
I'm all
right.
good to go.
Social media, friend or foe?
Friend.
What's the last book you read?
The Goldfinch.
Great. What are you streaming, or the last movie you watched?
I don't watch movies very often. What am I streaming? I'm listening to a lot of, oh my gosh, this sounds terrible. Gregorian chant while I work at the gym. I sound like a geek, but it's
No,
true.
we can geek out. There's David on the Keynote Curators podcast. There's room for everybody. So geek out all you want. Go take us to Geekapalooza if you want. 5-star beach resort or camping in the mountains?
Oh, beach resort all day long.
Okay. Ice cream, chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla
Okay.
with truffle salt. If
Ooh,
you haven't
baby.
tried truffle salt on vanilla ice cream, you're missing something in
Okay. Well,
life.
I think in Dallas, we might have to do that if we can find it, which I believe we probably can. What is the next place on your bucket list? Next travel place on your bucket list?
I get to go to such cool places with my work as a speaker. Bucket list travel. I'd love to go to Copenhagen. Haven't been. Heard so many great things. I have friends who grew up there who are in the design world, and as you know, Danish design is
Oh
a huge
boy,
thing. So Copenhagen,
fantastic.
Copenhagen's
Alrighty.
on the list.
Well, we will leave that moment of this episode right there. We'll find out if you ever got to Copenhagen or not for our next visit.
So you've left
Um,
me with this mental image, though, of walking the streets of Copenhagen, eating a vanilla ice cream with salt, and listening to Gregorian chant.
I think you've touched on a lot of core values there. So I just always want to end with thanking you for your generosity, your kind spirit, your big heart, your willingness to spend time with us. I know you're traveling, you're keynoting, you're preparing, you're researching, and you're pulled in many different directions, but to stop and sit with us and have this conversation that makes a difference for meeting professionals and business owners to expand capacities and be transformed really and be better and make a difference that lasts. I just want to acknowledge you for that and how quick you were to say yes, to be with us and give of yourself. So just thank you, David.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. The events industry has been very good to me over the years, and everything I can do to help. It's why we spend so much time working on things for the events industry. It's got to be reciprocal. So happy to have done it, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to our content. We'll keep bringing you the latest industry news and insights. Don't forget to follow us on social media so you never miss an update. And if you're looking for a keynote speaker for your next event, reach out to us directly or visit our website at thekeynotecurators.com.